Morning Class 6. Going to show you how to simplify fractions today because this will help you in your work. And we haven't done simplification of fractions for a long time, so just a memory jog here. The first fraction we've got is 4/8, and most of you, probably all of you, will realise that that's 1/2 because 4 is 1/2 of 8, and it's important to remember that it's 4 equal parts of 8 equal parts, which is the whole. But I'm just going to represent that using a diagram for you. So the whole is the blue circle, but we're going to split it into 8 equal parts. There we go. And the fraction is 4 equal parts out of 8. So I'm going to shade 4 in. And you can quite clearly see that that is the same as a half. So we write 1/2, and 1 is the numerator, 2 is the denominator. The line is called a vinculum, it's a divide line, but it's important to remember that 4/8 is equivalent to a half. We haven't changed the value. And interestingly, if I were just to put the, say, 400 there and 800 there, it's still half. Just because the numbers are bigger doesn't mean the value of the fraction is any bigger. Okay, 15/18. This isn't one that you could probably use a diagram for, but I'm going to show you the traditional way to find a simplified fraction and the most simple fraction. That's the important thing. So I've got 15 and 18 here. What we want to find is the factors, and more importantly, the common factors. So if I put here common factors, that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to list all the factors of 15 and all the factors of 18 and see if they share any. I think they will. So a factor is a number that is divisible into another number. So 1 goes into 15 15 times, 2 doesn't go in, 3 goes in, 4 doesn't, 5 does, and the next one is 15. So 15 has 4 factors, and you notice that they come in pairs, 3 times 5 and 1 and 15. 18, 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 18. So 18 has 6 factors, 3 factor pairs. But what we're looking for is the highest common factor of them both. And that means the highest or the biggest number that they both have as a factor. So they both have 1 and they both have 3. So clearly our highest common factor is 3. That's going to help us with the question. What we need to do now is divide both the top numerator and the bottom number, the denominator, by that highest common factor, which is 3, and that will give us our simplest fraction. So we've got 15 divided by 3 and 18 divided by 3. We've got to do the same to both, otherwise it's not an equivalent fraction. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 18 divided by 3 is 6. That is our simplest fraction of 15/18. Okay, 42/60. This is tough because the numbers are bigger and some of you might not be confident finding those highest common factors. So what we can do is reduce the size of the numbers slightly so we can make it easier later on in the answer. So without finding the highest common factor, I know they're both even, which means I can divide them both by 2. 2 might not be the highest common factor, but even if it's not, I can then use my next fraction, equivalent fraction, to take the answer to the end. So I'm going to divide them both by 2, which is halving. So that's 21/30. Now, that's not the simplest fraction, but it is going to help me because now I can find the highest common factor. I think 3 goes into both, which is the highest common factor. So 21 divided by 3 is 7. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So I think 7/10 is the simplest version of that first fraction. But the middle one is another equivalent fraction. It's just not the simplest. And one way to check if this is the simplest form is, again, what's the highest common factor? Well, I think there's only the number 1 that goes into both of those two numbers. And if we were to divide them both by 1, we've got 7 divided by 1 is 7. 10 divided by 1 is 10. So we have got already the simplified fraction. And then, without doing much work, you can spot fractions that can't be simplified or they're already in their simplest form. And the easiest ones are your unit fractions. So 1/6, 1/4, 1/3, and so on and so forth. Because 1 is always the highest factor of 1, which means they can't be divided down any further. But if we take something like 7/13, you'll know that they're both prime numbers. And if they're both prime numbers, it means that the factors they have are 1 and themselves. So that won't be simplified any further, and you can just keep that as your simplified answer. So hopefully class 6, there's a few ideas there. Just remember, look at the fraction first. Does it look like a half to you? Does it look like a quarter? If you're not sure, try and draw it out. But if you want to do it the proper way, you've got to find that highest common factor. You can halve the numbers if you wish, but it doesn't always work. And look for those prime numbers, because they can't be simplified very far. If they're both prime, you've already got your simplified fraction.